There are some times in the journey of spiritual awakening that everything you thought you could trust no longer seems dependable. There are moments in the journey where you are in between where you desire to be and what you have been wanting to release. It's not an overnight journey. We don't jump from one mountain peak to the next. The quote-unquote ego death is really an ego total knockout. We have these periods where certain attachments that the ego used to create safety show themselves to be unreliable. Maybe even show themselves to be the thing that's holding you back. I'm in a period of my spiritual awakening where I'm going through another ego TKO. And as you release karma, there will be a period of uncertainty, a period where you're not quite sure who you are, because so many things that were in your life have shifted. And in that shifting, it's like an earthquake that causes a tsunami. So the earthquake is the movement of the things that were foundational for you, the things that you stood on, the things that you thought that you believed in, the things that you thought you were supposed to be doing. And when the land starts to shift beneath your feet, that instability creates a tsunami wave of emotions that follow this event. And as the illusion, the Maya, that's upheld by the Gregorian calendar, which I've talked about so much, the difference between the frequency of a solar-based Gregorian calendar and a lunar-based Mayan calendar, or even Ethiopian calendar. Many other cultures focus on the phases of the moon to attract timing. And as you're traversing through your soul's evolutionary cycle, depending on the soul work that you have done and whatever you are doing day to day, usually determines the rate of these shifts. And so those tectonic plates beneath you that were once supporting you could be people who maybe have died or gotten sick, or maybe they're just no longer in your life for whatever reason. So you find yourself not having conversations with people who used to be there for you, because things are changing, and the earth is splitting into two separate versions of earth, one higher frequency and one a lower frequency, and this is all happening simultaneously. And depending on the planetary impact on you, the celestials affect us. I'm recording this on July 28th, 2024, so we're 2 days away from Sirius rising, which is the spiritual sun. So this is a reset. This is the actual new year right now. And a lot of us don't, or maybe haven't yet fully integrated the knowing of this information into our lives, but we're still being impacted and influenced by the energy of it. And usually around this period, you start to notice certain things that you relied on that are no longer reliable. People, places, and things You start to feel a calling to do something different. You start to feel a yearning to heal certain things in your life. You maybe even start to feel depressed, go through a dark night of the soul, which is this period where once your third eye is open and the illusions in your life start to reveal themselves, there's a period of grieving. There is a period of feeling the discomfort of not having those illusions anymore. You know, there is bliss created by ignorance for a period of time. So when you have accepted in your spiritual contract to go through a spiritual awakening, this is what you have agreed to. So for people who are in the 3D matrix reality and going through the 3D routines, they may not notice these things. They may be less self-aware and they may not notice these huge differences. But for people who wanted to awaken, there is a discomfort that comes with seeing the truth. And the truth can be a very hard pill to swallow, and it is usually a process of acceptance, a process of denial. Within, you going through the journey, a period of grieving. And then you come to the point sometimes where you have just hit rock bottom. This could be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, relationally, or all the above. And no matter what area of your life you are seeing these shifts happening, as these tectonic plates start to shift and the waves of tsunamis of emotions are created from what you're witnessing, you start to have a hard time trusting that things are going to work out because everything looks a certain way. And if you've been doing the work, this is the period where you can start to feel like none of this spiritual stuff is working for me. Or maybe it works for other people, but for some reason it's not working for me. And so you will either try harder or just stop and be like, fuck it. I'm just not gonna invest my energy in any of this. I'm not talking to my ancestors. I'm sick of it. Nothing is happening for me. Maybe it even seems like sometimes things get worse. I'm not doing no more rituals. I'm not mantra chanting. I can't meditate. I can't even sit still and quiet my mind enough to meditate. It's frustrating. I'm just not going to do it. And sometimes you have this period where you just like, fuck it all. And this period is no less valuable than any other period that you go through in your spiritual awakening. And, what triggered me doing this channeled message for you all, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I sat on this for a while on whether or not I was going to talk about it, because I don't want to invest too much attention into something that I'm believing is going to be resolved, because energy flows where attention goes, and I don't want to invest too much of my energy in the event that occurred. But I want to share this because I feel that it may help somebody else. But on June 20th of 2024, I started having some of the worst pain I had ever had in my knees and my shins. And it would just run up and down my legs, and I could usually get through the day and get most of what I needed done. And it got to the point where my productivity decreased almost 90%. And for me to be happy about life, there's a certain level of productivity that I expect from myself. Because if I'm not progressing in my journey, I have a tendency to slip into depression and anxiety and get overly worried about what's not happening, or catastrophic thinking about what's going to happen. Now, I've worked on an exercise for what I'm talking about, especially if you tend to have intrusive thoughts, an inner critic that speaks to you, and you lean towards pessimism and catastrophic thinking of things that may or may not go that way. There is a way that you can instantly take whatever that catastrophic thought is and turn it into something that will actually support you. So I'm working on that. I'm going to make some decisions soon on when I'm going to release that and how, because a lot of things are changing with my business as well. I'm 44 years old, so this is my second Saturn opposition, and this is a period of life where there is another phoenix rising from the ashes. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that we went through that whole journey and facilitated the participants to go through that journey as well. A lot of that information is right here on Patreon if you're listening to this on Patreon. But if you want more details about this, stay tuned so that you will know, and I will send out the notification. But not being able to walk, not being able to crawl because it was too painful to crawl, not being able to do my yoga routine, not being able to do my squats and my hip openers to release trauma that's been stored in my body, presented a major challenge for me, because that was a huge part of my routine, which means I had two options: give up and do nothing at all, or allow myself to recalibrate and shift with the shift, flow with the force that has entered into my life that I cannot control at the moment. And I realized how dependent I had become on those activities, and that's a great thing, because it takes discipline to take these activities and make them a part of your daily routine. You're actually committed to doing it every single day. And I had finally got to that point, so I felt really good about that. But not being able to continue felt equally as bad as it felt to be able to do it. And so I was presented with a new challenge. The way that I was treated when I went to the emergency room the first time was something out of a movie. It felt like a nightmare. And I ended up having to leave the hospital because everything that they were offering me was counterintuitive. And this is when I really start to feel how much of the 3D matrix solutions to problems have been purged from me as something that I accept as a solution. Now, this doesn't have to be physically. This could be financially for you. This could be relationship-wise for you. Maybe you once viewed marriage as something that was a solution, and now you view it as a problem. This could be so many different things. This could be whether or not you buy a house or don't buy a house. You could have once viewed that as a solution, when now you're like, is it really even worth it? So this could be many different things, but this is the shift that's occurring with each of us in one or more areas of our lives. So I decided to come home and do the best that I could with what I had, because what I was being offered was scary. I mean, you see the people who are like zombies from using fentanyl, right? It's all in the news. So to be offered that as a solution felt counterintuitive. And it felt like that it was opening a timeline that I did not want to be a part of. So I had to make peace with the pain and not accept the solution I was being offered by the 3D matrix, to keep myself in a timeline that I desired to be in, which was a really hard decision to make. And one thing about pain, extreme pain sometimes will make you do anything. That one thing you said you would never do, a certain level of pain can sometimes convince you that you got to do whatever. So I came home and I did the best that I could, and I was actually able to make it 2 weeks in that level of pain. And even though my productivity was lower and I couldn't invest as much energy in running a business, I did what I could. I did send out emails. I did remind people that I still do readings. I did a few things, but I had to be cognizant to not put too much stress on myself. And this is when I realized how dependent I got on the role of being an entrepreneur within the spiritual transformation realm. And this presented a whole other issue for me that I had to overcome, which was my fear of not being able to be in service to others. My fear of, for the very first time in my life, I'm having to slow down almost to zero as far as working so that I can extend my life. So this was really hard for me. On July 7th, I got back to that point again where I couldn't walk and I couldn't crawl. When you can't do neither, you got to do something. So I went to the hospital screaming to the top of my lungs. Couldn't breathe. All of my stats, heart rate, oxygen level, blood pressure, everything was just as bad as it could possibly be. And it was getting worse really quickly. I used every method I had ever taught to get myself through this. When I got about to the 9th hour, they went ahead and moved me to ICU. And it's a long story about a lot of things that happened there, but to make a long story short, I was able to see the 3D matrix that's going away. And it's not all bad, because some of the stuff was a necessary stepping stone for us to get to this point. And I was able to see the higher timeline that I wanted to be on, but I wasn't able to access it. And I had to make peace with where I was. And throughout this process, being in this condition, it was scary. And no matter how brave and resilient I've been through life, there are moments in life that scare me. And that's okay. Because if you never feel fear, you never really get to face it and overcome it. So, shifting back to my purpose and sharing this with you all is that no matter where you are in your journey, if people that you have known your whole life start to feel like strangers to you, if you start to feel like a stranger in your own house, in your own body, in your career, whatever it may be, just know that you're being offered an opportunity to step into a higher timeline that's more aligned with your authentic self. And I do not care who you are. There's a percentage of what you felt was your identity that was not authentic to your I-divinity. Okay? Our identity is who we have to become in this physical avatar on this planet to get through life. But your I-divinity is who you are at your core, beneath your fears, beneath your false self, beneath the people pleasing, beneath the codependency, beneath the anger issues, the trust issues, beneath the complex PTSD, beneath all of the things that we have discovered about ourselves on this journey of spiritual ascension. There is a part of your life that's not authentic to who you are, that is being challenged and dissolved. As I share this with you, I hope that this gives some insight and maybe even some inspiration for you to know it's okay to not know. It's okay to not have all the answers. You know why it's okay? And I speak from the perspective of a perfectionist, a workaholic, a people-pleasing codependent who for many years was in service to others and wasn't fully taking care of myself because I did not know how. I became an expert at loving, nurturing, inspiring, and guiding other people, but a rookie at doing it for myself because of my upbringing. So for me to have lived 31 years past my life expectancy, because the doctors told me that I may not live past 13, that's an accomplishment in itself. And I had to shift my perspective from feeling like I was accomplished, from looking at my bank account, my business, what people are saying about me, the reviews, the comments, all of that bullshit. And not saying that it's not important, but if I am using that to measure my accomplishments as a human being who was dealt a hand and I had to make the best out of what I had, I am bound to feel like a failure over and over again. The way that you measure yourself cannot be through the filter of the external world. It has to be coming from your soul and who you are at your core. Despite what other people say, despite whatever else is happening in your life, despite the expectations and standards that our toxic culture has placed on us, especially as women, that illusion is collapsing. And in order for the divine feminine to come into its fullness, there are a lot of things in our society that were created to keep us stuck in woundedness that is now collapsing. And it is not a comfortable place, but it is a sign of growth. Let me say that again. If you are uncomfortable in your journey, and if something does not seem like it's matching up with your authentic self, it is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign of your growth. Now, we're at the place where we're coming up to the Lioness Gate portal on August 8th, 2024. This is the numerological year of 8, which I spent 2 hours explaining, and that's on Patreon. That 8th year holds the seed of a new beginning. Many of us want to step into the I-Divine versions of ourselves, but because there are so many external voices claiming that they have the solutions and answers, a lot of us don't really know for sure what belongs in our life right now. And that is okay as well. Sometimes the most effective thing that you can do in your spiritual ascension is to surrender what you cannot control and practice daily trusting what you cannot see. Because if all of your trust goes into what you see, you are tethered to the physical 3D matrix that focuses on the simulation that is the illusion that we called our reality. I am in a place right now where hard work, physical sacrifice, discipline, discomfort, exercise, a lot of these things aren't things that I can count on anymore. So what am I left with? Trusting in the divine. Fully trusting in the divine. Fully trusting in the process. Trusting the universe. Trusting the law of attraction. Trusting that there are ancestors who were aware of the spiritual shift that was occurring, who had already positioned themselves to support me before I even knew I was going to be here. Trusting that the goddesses, the gods, the deities, the orishas, the nettas, the netarus, whether I am initiated or not, trusting that me crossing paths with them and being aware of them is a part of the success story that I am creating, that I am scripting the new verses for me to live on the new earth as my new authentic I divine self. Trusting in that. Trusting that I do not have to have it all figured out. I don't have to always know exactly where my help is going to come from, but trusting that it's going to come. Trusting in whatever my hands touch and blessing that. Being grateful for every single thing that I have. Giving thanks before I take a sip of water. Practicing being grateful even if I'm crying my eyes out. Trusting that even if my body will not function the way that I want it to, that things are going to work out for me. Trusting that even if I do not know whether or not my business is going to survive this spiritual awakening thing, because no one really tells you that when you become a spiritual entrepreneur, there are certain things you're going to go through that regular entrepreneurs may not go through. Trusting that it's still going to work out. Trusting that somewhere, somehow, I am not being discarded and abandoned and rejected. I'm not in that loop anymore. And even though everything that I'm looking at might show me something else, the power of my perception, pop, 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 will allow me to create a reality from the unseen realm as a co-director, as a co-coordinator with the divine. Trusting in that. Trusting that Mother Nature is looking after me. Trusting that Mama Earth is aware of my presence and supporting me to have this life. Trusting that the rays from the sun have me in mind. Trusting that the spiritual sun Sirius is assisting me. Trusting that every deed I have ever done from my heart, whether or not the person thanked me, trusting that that seed planted is coming back to me. Trusting that. Trusting the fact that every day that I have breath in my body is a second chance. Trusting that. Trusting what you cannot see. When you can no longer depend on what you are looking at. Shift your focus to trusting what you cannot see is working on your behalf. And as I record this, I proclaim this for me and for everybody else who needed to hear this, that you have not come this far for your story to end the way it started. You are the transformation that you seek. Namaste. Namaste. One love. Ashe.